okay, 30,000 trees, where do I start?
Right.
You know?
The University of Minnesota has been developing new varieties of apple trees since 1908.
We'll raise these trees for 6 or 8 years. They have about 2 to 3 minutes to impress me.
And the next success story could be growing behind this locked gate
We have a little process we use.
at the 200-acre Horticultural Research Center in Carver County.
I would say we have in the neighborhood of about 30,000 trees just like this that were developed from our breeding with the best of hopes that they were going to be the next Honeycrisp.
Any idea how many trees you've grown over the years?
Boy, I have never done that math. It's certainly in the millions.
Apple breeder David Bedford
And they had all the best hopes that Minnesota was going to be a great place for apples.
says early settlers moving west brought apple trees with them.
It was sort of a subsistence life, but apples gave them a little bit of sweetness. There was some sugar in apples. You could bake them, you could make sauce of them.
And hard cider.
And a lot of them went into hard cider, let me tell you.
But Minnesota winters killed those trees from the east.
Well, that's right. As a result of that, the Minnesota State Legislature funded a program at the university.
And university researchers started working to create trees that would survive the cold and apples that tasted good.
We've introduced 28 varieties.
The list includes the Haralson, which was introduced 100 years ago.
But beyond the borders of Minnesota, most people didn't know about it.
Zestar, Sweet Tango, First Kiss, and the biggest hit of all,
Honeycrisp really has spread around the world, so it's been a great ambassador for our breeding program.
the Research Center plants about 4,000 apple trees a year, each one propagated from a tree with promising qualities.
And we will take cuttings from that tree, graft that onto a rootstock, and in effect clone this tree.
The goal is to create a better tasting, more hardy, and disease-resistant apple.
Yeah, that's right.
They get rid of another 4,000 trees every year that don't make the cut.
Most of them in any given day are given the thumbs down.
And to determine that, this time of year, when the fruit hangs heavy on branches, Bedford uses his keen sense of taste
Nice.
to sample up to 500 apples a day.
No, thank you. Well, you know, they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, so you can imagine how far away that doctor must be from me.
Well, when you think about the apples that the university has developed, you have to start with David Bedford. And he's this treasure of a resource to the industry.
Paul Huguenin with the State Department of Agriculture says Minnesota sells up to $20 million worth of apples a year.
So Kevin, Minnesota grown apples are nothing short of miraculous. So we're in a state where it's very difficult to grow things because we've got a short growing season and we have some of the harshest winters anywhere. And yet we have apples that are grown all over the world and are some of the best anywhere.
There is a lot of swinging and missing in apple breeding. 1 in 10,000 trees will make the cut. 1 in 400 will get to this point where they're marked with a blue ribbon so they can watch it grow and taste it.
So the first thing we do is look at the skin color.
Here's how Bedford searches for perfection.
First thing we would look at, of course, is the skin color, red. And most people assume that if an apple's red, it's ripe.
ripe.
But I can tell you that that's only true in about 50% of the cases. The red skin color will often come before the real maturity does. But you know, the real truth is told on the backside, the part that's not red. And you see how green that is? That says not ready. So you want to, when you turn that apple around, you want to see a more yellow. It can have a little green, but boy, that's pretty darn green.
If it passes the eye test, he tastes them.
You know, for me, the first thing I'm thinking about is what is that texture like? Is it like a Honeycrisp or is it like a Red Delicious? Is it wonderful or is it horrible? Why don't you see what you think of this one, Kevin?
Great texture.
Much closer. Yep.
And I like this, but you don't. It doesn't make the cut.
It doesn't make the cut. You know, this is not too bad, but in our world, not too bad. That's the kiss of death.
Well, I can't throw this away. This is pretty good.
I'll join you.
It is beautiful.
It is that, yep. And you know, if that's all we had to do every day was find a beautiful apple, we could go home early every day. But it's
But
more
it's
than
not
that.
perfect.
It's not perfect, yeah.
What's it like when you taste one and go, oh, we got something?
Well, we don't get that too often, but I do remember that in one case that in my recent history, and that was the first time I tasted the original Sweet Tango tree.
That original Sweet Tango tree stands alone in a field because it is the only one that made the cut. It's the parent of every sweet tango apple tree in the world.
1 in 10,000 makes the grade, and this was a 1 in 10,000.
And this is a cross between the Honeycrisp and Zestar?
That's correct, yeah. But you see that texture? That crispness, it just kind of melts in your mouth, but it's firm but juicy. And that's what we're looking for. It's like 1,000 little diamonds in there. Maybe it's just coming from Triangle, but that's part of, you can actually see that crispness in that kind of apple. But a Honeycrisp or its children, when you bite into it and pull your mouth back, it cracks off in a slab. It's a slab of just explosive juiciness. That's the stuff right there.
But the most famous tree is in another part of the orchard. This is the oldest Honeycrisp apple tree in the world.
How many Honeycrisp apple trees around the world is this tree responsible for?
Oh boy, it's been pretty productive. I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 20 million trees worldwide. Wow. It's been a workhorse. That's the original, right there. I think in the apple breeding world, you have to be very satisfied with delayed gratification because the whole process takes 20 to 30 years. And in fact, Honeycrisp here was bred 30 years before it was released. And now it's been out for almost another 30 years. So 60 years later, we're still proud of it.
Minnesota grown, a legacy of hardiness and explosive juiciness. Enjoyed by apple lovers around the world.
Delicious.